Okay, there we go. We'll call our meeting to order. Could we have a roll call?
Chairperson Melinda Jordan.
Here. Okay, 5. All right. We have public invited to be heard. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address. Please do not direct your comments directly toward anybody. Be polite.
Hi, John Grunsfeld, 229 Airport Road, my business. And again, I want to welcome Dan and Matt to your, I think, second Airport Advisory Board. And, you know, we have a long line of public speakers here tonight, but I do want to thank all of you for helping Levi, helping the city, helping the community. Top of my item list is that the planning department just closed comments for a development that would be 1,500 feet away from the end of the runway, 50 feet tall, 306, I think, residences, that is a hazard to aviation. I put in an input. You're welcome to take a look at that. But I hope that the Airport Advisory Board takes a look at it, maybe goes out to the property and stands there on any given, typical nice day to see how many planes. I keep track when I fly over of what my height is when I pass over that property, and it's typically when I'm coming in on the instrument approach, about 150 feet. That means I fly 100 foot over the building. The FAA regs allow you to be basically 6 feet, meaning that a tall person, not me, standing on the roof would have to duck in order to avoid being hit by an airplane. That would be legal by the FAA requirements. And so it's just the wrong place to put a building. One of the attachments I put in with my input was a picture of the Fullerton Airport, which is an airport of about the same size as ours, in California, where very sadly an RV-12, which is a small 2-person airplane, looks like it stalled spin into a factory, killing the pilot, his 16-year-old daughter, starting a rather large fire, injured 19 people. And when you overlay that on top of the Longmont Airport, the place where the airplane hit is exactly where Modern West wants to build. And the reason is because Fullerton allowed development all the way up to the airport property line, as many airports do, under the claim that, well, there's nowhere else to build. And invariably, because airplanes do crash, not at the rate cars crash, but occasionally they crash. And if you build all the way around an airport, takeoff and landing is the most dangerous phase of flying. Most accidents, 50% of all accidents, occur right around the airport during takeoff or landing operations. And so we're just asking for trouble. That's, the dark side. The other side of it, which, we're not represented tonight, is if they do build it, what do you think those 300 people are going to start doing? Complaining about noise, because we put an airport right next to their apartment building. And so it's, a bad idea. There are other places to put more residences. And what I encourage you to do is to drive down Rogers Road or drive down Nelson. And as you get further away from the airport, like 3,000 feet away, you start seeing that we have fully filled, the city of Longmont, we have fully filled all available land, 3,000, 4,000 feet away from the airport and away, with high-density housing. And at some point, we need to provide this buffer for airplanes. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and at the appropriate time, as a board, you can have an influence, it's your job, on the city council to hopefully disapprove of development there. And that specific development, Modern West, and then we can start talking about how do we protect that land. And I'll just mention that in these discussions, the FAA Office of Airport Planning for the Northwest region, which is based in Denver, said, well, if we knew people were going to plan to build there, we would have helped you buy the land. And so if we can turn it down, as the FAA has suggested we do, there's a chance that we might be able to apply for an airport grant to have them help the city purchase that land, create open space, which is a very high priority for Advanced Longmont and for the city and the people of Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and move on to approval of the minutes from January. What I got. I can go ahead and do it this way. Are you on?
Yeah. Maybe I didn't know if that was messing it up or not.
Okay. I did see on page 2, first line, John Grunsfeld spoke, and he's got an S in his name, Grunsfeld. And on page 3, line 13, was when I was speaking, I stated we would need to go through AOPA so the board could speak as individuals. I think I meant LOPA, which is LOPA, Longmont Owners and Pilots Association. And then, of course, for the sake of discussion, AOPA, yes, we can get them involved to help us as well. But I think I meant LOPA by that, which is the local organization on the field. So LOPA. And then, does anybody else see anything?
I move to approve.
Could I get a second?
And I'll second.
Hold on. Sam?
Oh, I'll second that.
There we go. Thank you. Moved and approved to accept our January minutes with those 2 minor changes. Levi, do you have any changes to the agenda for us?
No, not off
Okay.
the top of my head.
I saw that in my notes that I'm supposed to
Okay.
ask that. Number 5 is updates from our airport manager.
All right, updates. I will go through these. I just have a short list today. We'll go through these one at a time. I'll pause for any questions. First thing, wildlife fence. I think last time I was here, we were pretty much wrapping up. It's pretty much done. We do now have all the signatures and all the finishing paperwork for procurement to completely finish that project out for the city's purposes. Those were submitted, I want to say, 2-3 days ago to procurement. I haven't heard any final word from them, but we have all signatures to complete that project out. It is now officially done, from our respect anyway, unless they come back and say we didn't do something right. Anything, questions on the wildlife fence on that? Good. Taxiway Alpha reconstruction project is moving forward. Been having meetings with the FAA regarding that, and back and forth between the engineers and FAAs regarding what grants we're going to get for that. That project is still slated to probably be completed in 2 phases, one kind of later this year and then one in 2026. So planning kind of and then a major construction phase, perhaps splitting out the construction. That is moving forward. Last week, we had some contractors out on that Taxiway Alpha doing core samples on it to start giving us some idea of what truly what we're going to have to deal with when we do that reconstruction project moving forward. So kind of the first steps of the project have been taken now with when those samples have been taken. For those of you, I think everyone's familiar with the Taxiway Alpha project. We're calling it Alpha. It's actually the taxiway connector of the asphalt that goes along the northeast side of the airport, up there around the tower and kind of on the diagonal back towards the FBO. It's that chunk of pavement, if you will, all the asphalt. Any questions on that? Okay. Pavement rehab, just nothing's a lot changed on that. Just as a quick reminder, this spring, we've already put it out for bid. Contractors have been awarded for pavement rehab on the ramp itself. So they will be doing a few minor panel replacement kind of corrections, some sealing, some cleaning, some improvements to the ramp in general, and that's being funded by a CDOT grant. That work is. Any questions on that one? Okay. Modern West 1 is kind of back around, and we've already kind of heard about this already, but for official record, that is kind of back around. I was asked for comment on a Modern West 1, I want to say it was about 2-3 weeks ago now. My comments on Modern West 1 were essentially the same comments that I had given prior, and the same as Modern West 2, addressing the issues with noise, with safety, et cetera, et cetera. And the Colorado Department of Transportation and the FAA have both written letters to the city in opposition of Modern West 1. To my understanding, that project is now back kind of through the sequence of being approved by City Council. I'm not 100% clear on why that is. It had been approved before. They seem to be making them go through the process again, is the way it appears. So my... And again, I think the next step is they have to go to the planning board and then to city council, to my understanding, if I understand that correctly. Any questions on the Modern West 1 stuff?
Do you think we need to submit anything else at this point? Because the deadline was before the board could meet.
Yeah.
So we weren't able to, but we had submitted last year.
And unfortunately,
yeah.
As you mentioned, the deadline was before the board met. Their main point of concern seemed to be making sure that I did send that information out to let you guys know that there was something up with Modern West 1. I feel like, and the letters that were written prior are still in the record, and none of that has been like washed away or anything like that. So as it stands, those comments still stand on the Modern West development. So from a practical standpoint, I'm not sure. I guess that's the way of going around that. The comments from the Airport Advisory Board still stand as they are. If you wanted to do something additional, I guess that would be amongst the board to discuss. But yeah,
The process is closed at this point.
Yeah.
So if we did, somebody would receive it, but I'm not sure what they do with it. And just in case the board doesn't know, Levi wrote a very succinct letter, especially addressing noise, safety obviously, and then noise on top of that. And then some pilots on the field submitted packets, and they were also very comprehensive, showed some of their ADS-B and just what altitude they were at as they came over, their concerns about safety, their experience with crashes in that area in the past. And so we did get some really good input. I felt completely comfortable that we had a good show, only a few documents, but very concise. And considering that we weren't going to be able to meet to submit anything from us, we would have just said the same thing, and they did a nice job with it. So I feel like we were well represented by pilots on the field and your letter. And then knowing that CDOT chimed in this time, the FAA did not change their stance. And then, of course, it all happened in the horror week in aviation. So it's a good time for us to be having this conversation because it's really front of mind with what's just happened recently. So thank you for your letter. And I think at this point, the period is closed, so I think we wait and we'll be watching for it to come before council and come to those meetings. And if they open up anything for comment, then we could provide additional comment after that. So we're just sort of on a wait and see right now to see if it's going to come before council or if planning and zoning gets it, what they're going to do. And they meet every other week, so it could come to them first. I'm not sure. So we're just monitoring,
sure.
and
Yeah.
Levi will know, and then I'm monitoring to see if there's a chance for us to speak up.
and the planning department recently has been very good about communicating
Yeah,
about
they have
projects that have been around the airport.
Yeah.
To hopefully reduce confusion that was occurring before. So they have been keeping me pretty well informed. So that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I feel like even though we couldn't meet in time, at least we knew about it, and other people were able to provide input. So we let the pilots community know, and then they wrote in. So it was. I felt like we were well represented by what was submitted. It was short and sweet and to the point. So it was good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right. One last item on kind of the general update before we get into information items and stuff like that. We have had several complaints about laser strikes in the pattern at Longmont on for runway 29 for a crosswind turn to downwind. So I have been in communication. I did notify the Longmont police, and that's kind of outside their jurisdiction, but we did that as a point of procedure and making sure that we're communicating. I had to reach out to the FAA. The FAA provided me with a link, and they said if we have pilots with issues, to please ask them to file reports through the FAA. And I did include that in my airport newsletter that I put out a few days ago. So that is there for their reference should they have any issues. Any questions on that occurrence? Okay.
Were you able to reach the individual?
No. So I'm currently dealing with through the FAA and trying to get a more formal procedure established and try to, cross T's, dot I's, do things
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah. Okay.
For that.
Okay.
And that's what I have for the update. Any other general airport update questions on anything that I might have missed?
I don't think you missed it, but I've noticed virtually every time I dial the AWAS, it rings busy.
So we've been having issues with, and I thought they were fixed until I think it was last night or this morning, with the physical phone line. So the AWAS station itself seems to be working fine and all things like that, but we've got like a super old school landline and some old infrastructure on that side of the runway. And last time I called, they said they found a mouse nest and they had to take it out of the box. But I'm glad you reminded because I want to follow up with them, so I'm going to write myself a note to follow up again with them.
The comment I heard on the AWAS was you had to be pretty much on top of the airport to pick it up in some aircraft.
Okay. And DBT will be doing their inspection here probably within the next month, so I'll ask them about that too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
I had a quick question, snow removal, expenditures and any issues with that lately?
No big issues so far. Well, so far this year we've been under budget. I haven't checked since the last couple of storms, but we've been pretty much on target. No complaints from financial or from the contractor as far as issues with that. So far on point. And then we'll be going through the process soon here again for getting a new contract for next season too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So that's all I have for the update.
Sir. Shall we go to informational items?
Informational items. All right. First thing, Vance Brand Noise Abatement Program update. Really one quick thing for that. Did do a meeting with city management this morning, and among other things, we did talk about kind of some strategies for moving forward with that. So one thing that I have forwarded to them is a draft of a noise abatement communication plan. So as we all know, we have a noise abatement plan at the airport. One of the things that we're looking into doing to help better communicate what we are doing is a communications plan. So the communications plan would be something more generally for the public or for people who are interested in learning about the noise abatement program that aren't necessarily pilots, and that kind of says how we are engaging with pilots. So a draft of that is I kind of put around my crew. My hope is that I will have something that I can share with you guys on that next month, as far as kind of a draft of that. It's going to be pretty succinct, like a page. It's going to say things like, we meet with flight schools in the area. We have posters that we post in the FBO, stuff like that. It's going to kind of go through what our plan for communicating our noise abatement procedures are to the aviation community in general. Any questions on that?
Has anybody else used, I think like back in December when people kind of complained about the noise, you said there was a way for them to post specific in numbers. Has anybody posted anything through the website or said they've had any specific incidences?
So for the most part, and we do track in numbers as far as what complaints go, and for the most part, there seems to be, without a formal analysis or, applying an algorithm to sort it out, it's pretty across the board. Of course, we have more complaints for the planes that fly more like the flight school planes. Mm-hmm. logical. But apart from that, it seems to be pretty much based on frequency of flight, and no true rhyme or reason. Looking real quick at last year, there were just a few handful of planes that had multiple complaints, and most of them were Aerospheres planes, and then a stray one, that just happened to have 2 noise complaints on the same day, and it was the same issue. So there is no huge highlighted aircraft at the time, or someone that seems to obviously be abusing the privilege, let's say, out there. But yes, we do track all of that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
That's a nice segue. That provides a nice segue to the annual report, because that, we do report on that in the annual report.
Yeah, and that's something that we put on the schedule for now, just for nothing else, to wake us up a little bit and start thinking about the annual report. That's one of those things that always seems to kind of catch us kind of at the end of things, and we just kind of rush to push it through. So for information items today, annual report, kickoff, get it on everybody's mind, kind of start thinking about what we want to do for it, if there's anything particularly. This year, with having a full year of data from tracking aircraft, I'll be able to share more, good hard fact and figures that you could potentially put in that report that we do. We'll have really great things to put in about the air show that we just had in that annual report. And hopefully here, I have been promised by the Colorado Department of Transportation that we will be getting the completed study from the financial impact for our airport, and indeed they're doing it for every airport across the state, and we'll have those figures that we could potentially include in an annual report also. So good things coming this year, information-wise, for including in that.
So to that point, start thinking about things you know of that happen on the field that you either hear about or hear presentations about or witness. I'm thinking medical flights, animal rescue. We see like when the Blackhawks come and train, things like that. But the things that go on the field, we like to include that if we can. Milestones, accomplishments, achievements. Youngest pilot or third generation, or just things like that sort of convey a picture of the airport. The report itself only has to be very dry, just some numbers and very just statistical stuff. I like to make it a little bit more relatable, so that the public can look at it and see, okay, they're not just doing flight school noise, that one of those planes was hauling some dogs out of the fire or something like that, to have people realize that other things do happen out of the airport than just flight school traffic and skydiving. And then we will have the expo to report on as well. And then the annual report, CABA's is out, and then we're waiting on the big one as well, and I think that's out within a month, I think I saw. So that was good. And then, were you at the meeting? You were out there.
Yes,
Yeah,
I was at
okay.
the CABA meeting and the CAOA meetings.
Yeah. So I watched I watched it online for the board meeting, and that was a really good meeting.
Yep.
So just so you know, through the Colorado Aviation Board, St. Vrain Valley School District received grant money for one of their programs, and then this project that Levi's talking about was funded and approved for the excess because the costs went up, and they did approve that. So we do show up in their transactions, and then St. Vrain, which is again the argument for a lot of the things that happen at our airport. And they were, it was for some devices, and they wanted 10, and I think they got granted 5. And their aviation program is very robust and exciting. And so a lot goes on that the public just does not know, or doesn't know to connect the dots. People are aware that they're doing drones, but they don't know that drone program led into a general aviation program. They're building airplanes.
And that would be another great article for
Yep.
the annual report right there, too.
Exactly.
Yep.
So just be thinking about it, and then next month we'll move some stuff forward on information, and then we'll get it. It's pretty quick to tidy it up once we're ready. We've got the template, and if we need to, we can make it dry, but I try to put a little color in it to give a better picture. Sometimes the
Yeah.
paper features it. They'll put it in the paper.
And we will, and just to remind everybody, we will essentially, in essence, have to do 2, because there's a standard format
Right.
one that I have to do, and then traditionally this board has done one that's got a little bit more to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When do we
it-
need to submit?
The official one is
Yeah.
due by June, right?
Yeah, it's like a one-page document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll aim for, I'd say, let's aim for April to have that finished, to just get it off our plate.
It'd be
And
great.
then
It'd be really
if
great to
we've
put
got
them
a-
in at the same time. It'd be
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah.
But we do want to get that economic
Yeah.
information that's
Yes.
coming in those statewide reports. Any other questions on that? Did you? Oh, Mr. Levi, we're up to action items.
I don't think we have any today.
I would ask, I had the annual report on there, and then the other, not an action item necessarily, but that the Economic Development Partnership is doing a big
Oh,
presentation
yes.
next week or the
Mhm.
week after. And we were invited to it, and we tried to get on the, become a speaker or get a window to present. And they've got their lineup done. That is open to the public. You do, I think you need a reservation, and it is $45 a person. It'll be at the museum on Tuesday, the 25th.
And that's a good one to put on for radar moving forward for sure. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that conversation has
Or the
been
20
had.
Yeah, the 25th, so in almost 2 weeks. So we are going to talk to them, I think we were saying by May. So, and Dr. Grunsfeld has offered to help with that as well. And we're going to talk to the economic development, make sure they've got the most current information, they're aware of who we're connected to and the impact, and get us more in their conversations, because we seem to always be out of it.
And I guess while we're on that topic, I can add a little bit more to the study, the economic impact study that's releasing out. So for those on the board and in the public who are familiar with that document, it's about a 4 or 5 page document traditionally that includes information on the airport, how many businesses, how much revenue do those businesses bring in, how much indirect revenue does the airport bring in via hotel stays, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To my understanding and what I've kind of seen from talking to the individuals who have been tasked with doing the new report, the new one's going to be much more in depth. The new report is actually also going to include tools with it, tools that they're just making for everyone, whether they want to use them or not, including presentations for airport advisory boards, presentations for city council, stuff like that. So apparently the new improved 2.0 economic impact study is going to be a much increased thing. So great, all the more info, all the better. I was talking with one of the gentlemen who's doing the study, and they said they've done animated maps that show you how many planes over 12,500 pounds flying to your airport, and where they come from in the nation. So stuff like that, visuals that you can include too. So I'm eagerly awaiting that report, and I'm actually scheduled, I want to say in about a week and a half. Kimberly Horn, the group, I can't remember, I think it's Kimberly Horn and CDOT together are doing a presentation to essentially launch it, and they've invited all the airport managers to sit through that presentation. I'm signed up to do that, so we'll learn about what they went through for the report, all the deliverables and everything like that. So it's a big deal. Yeah.
To formalize this so that we're not just making up numbers
Yeah.
and, trying to put a pretty picture on stuff,
Yeah,
and
it's
that'll
a-
get us the actual brass tacks.
It's going to be a pretty impressive report that a whole bunch of resources went into creating. Yeah.
Fantastic, that's exciting. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to ask about before we move to final public invited to be heard? We're going to be breaking records with our meeting.
I think we are. Yeah.
We are too. All my little touch points we have done. All right, so final public invited to be heard. Please state your name and address. You've got 5 minutes.
Did you have that? You're still on.
Oh, I'm,
All right, John Grunsfeld. I just looked up the letter from Phil Taylor, and so it was a development proposal referral letter, and a referral letter is a technical term. And so the only comments that they actually solicited were comments from the Airport Advisory Board, Boulder County Land Use and Development, the Federal Aviation, and Excel Energy, and on a separate letter, they asked for CDOT input. And that collection of groups was selected from previous comments that the attorney had addressed in a letter. And so they wanted those groups that they referred to look at the attorney's letter and provide back comments. The next stage will move to a planning commission meeting using all those inputs and additional comments from the aviation attorney that the developer hired. Following that, there will be a planning commission board public meeting at which they will solicit comments again from the public. And so I think that might be an appropriate time for the Airport Advisory Board to provide timely input. So my recommendation is go ahead and still prepare comments. And you can, and it says that, I don't want to install Office, thank you. Comments returned to the planning division after the deadline will be forwarded to the applicant anyway. So, if you develop a position, and I recommend that you do, you can still send that to Phil Taylor and it will still get to the applicant, it will still be included. It just may not appear in the Planning Commission's next response.
Okay.
And so, probably just the likely path would be to ask Levi to ask Phil, does he want comments now or does he want them later? Because you were requested to provide comments, so. Okay, thanks.
Seeing no one else, we will move to board, city council, staff comments. Let me start with you, Levi, and then do we know, I guess my question would be, do we know when we're going to get a liaison and who it might be?
I still have not heard any
Yeah.
more about that. Of course, Mr. Schilling and Mr. McCoy had other engagements tonight, so they weren't here. I have not been officially informed one way or the other.
Okay.
I have not.
Who else would like to say something? And I want to thank you for looking at that process. So as a board, we would need to have the content, which we can prepare and have for the next meeting. And I appreciate, Dr. Grunsfeld, that we can check with Phil and see if he wants it now or if he wants us to wait. But we can get something prepared and then discuss it in our next meeting. I think we've got 4 weeks, hopefully. Because unfortunately, again, that deadline was before we could meet, and it was too close to even pull together an emergency meeting, because I did try to do that.
Yeah.
It was just too close. So that's all I've got. Anybody else?
Oh, you got it.
I have to agree. Some comment is better than no comments. One thing I think we need to look out for is the FAA grants. I think that we should look at the grant language very closely to make sure that there's no tricky language in there. That's all I have.
Yep. And grants are always well vetted by the city's attorney's office. Yep.
There now.
Yeah.
I guess just for conversation, I'll add that AOPA did a survey, and it was interesting enough, I did a screenshot and printed it out. And they asked, what amenities does your airport offer to pilots based there and spectators? And the results were a restaurant, 33% had a restaurant, 37% had a viewing area, 21% had a restaurant and a viewing area, and then a small percentage had a playground, and a small 3%, close to 4%, a restaurant and a playground. So they looked at the different combinations of things. I thought that was interesting. And we have Alexis with the Flight Deck Grill, and now she's opened the restaurant down in the old Cyclops. So be sure and do business with her. And that's an easy jump when you get done at the airport. If she's not there with the truck like right now, head down and support her restaurant. And we just continue to look toward how we get that big picture move forward for the airport that anybody would, I think, agree. We'd like a new FBO. We'd like a built-in permanent restaurant, and to be able to offer this because it's such a draw. And we have some in the area. flight deck or Perfect Landing is a fancier, a fancier affair when you go down there. And then Metro still has Blue Sky Bistro. But there aren't a lot of airport. Greeley still has theirs. It
Yeah.
would be just such a cool draw for us. And then, of course, if we can add in electrification and all the other things, we really are poised to use what we've got and really improve it and continue to move forward in the future with a contemporary facing the current environment and the current availability with no lead gas and electric charging. So we'll continue to kind of keep that in our conversation and how we move that from conversation to getting it into a plan and getting it so that it could eventually show up as reality, which is always the struggle. Talk about a lot of things, but trying to get them to actually cross the finish line is always hard. So that was an interesting study, I thought. And the solar, I was looking at one of the airports that they featured, and it was Pittsburgh, Massachusetts, KFIT, and they have a restaurant. They have solar doing their charging stations for electric. They have a very robust offering of shops on the field, prop and avionics, and quite a few support, but it's a very small field. And then they had just won a grant, was why I looked them up. And then I looked up their board meeting, and noise abatement is a permanent issue, but it started like last spring for them, and then by this summer it became a standing item on their agenda as well. So I found them to be interesting because they were very similar to us in size and just the things that they were trying to accomplish. So there's a lot out there, and Levi's done a lot to get us the grants that we've got, and it's really just figuring out that big picture and defining it so we can get ourselves up into the current century with how our buildings look. And I still don't know how we get that electric piece pulled in with LPC or not, but that's always been interesting because we have LPC right here, and I just think it makes it a really attractive package for the city of Longmont to have their airport, their utility.
And there's more to come on that too.
Yeah.
The city is working on increasing the electric grid, and one of my big things has been, I've mentioned it before in previous meetings, is completing the loop on that end of the city, because right now the airport's kind of on the dead end of that electric loop, or there is no electric loop, so that's why we have more brownouts, power outs. That's why there's issues with the gates at our airport. But yes, I was actually just talking to them this week. They're moving forward with some plans and some preliminary planning stuff for starting to improve things out there.
Okay, so I can't resist. We're at the end of the power loop because that airport was so far outside of town that most people didn't even know it existed. So that's, again, to development. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to update or ask about? All right, well, we're going to adjourn another record-breaking short meeting. Appreciate that. And next month, again, if anybody anticipates not being able to be here, please shoot me a message. So if we're looking at not having a quorum, we can save the trouble of getting everybody down here. I have no reports for next month. The month of April, Dan will be out. He let me know. But otherwise, yeah, if you think you'll be out. And Charles had let us know plenty in advance. Otherwise, we'll see you in a month right here. All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.